Okay, so we'll try to transition from cuteness into a sermon real quick. Parable of the Good Samaritan. Chances are you know this parable. Chances are that not only do you know this parable, but if you have never opened a Bible, if today is your first Sunday to ever walk into a church, chances are you know this parable, right? This is a very popular parable, a very popular story. As I've told y'all in the past, I have spent, and probably will continue to spend way too much time watching TV and movies, right? And for some reason, I have a bit of an ability to recall those things I've seen on TV and in movies. In fact, I'm pretty sure that if my entire education had been a movie, I'd be working like my 5th PhD by now. But it wasn't, so I'm not. Anyway, so when I was a kid, watching a lot of TV, I watched a lot of reruns too. I love to watch reruns of Lost in Space. Do y'all remember that show, Lost in Space? A few of y'all do? Yeah? Big fan? Alright. Children, we can YouTube it later. It'll be fine. Yeah, big fan of Lost in Space. Love to watch the reruns. I did not like the movie reboot in the 1990s. Just wasn't the same thing. But I remember one time when I was little, an episode of Lost in Space called The Golden Man. The Golden Man is about the family and Dr. Smith land on a planet. And the planet they land on, these two alien races are fighting one another. And they have a representative from each race on that planet. And the first one they meet is the Golden Man. And he is beautiful. He is gold from his skin to his spaceship. Everything is gold. And of course, immediately Dr. Smith becomes enamored with the Golden Man. The other alien that he is fighting against is an ugly, frog-looking creature. And so Dr. Smith takes the Golden Man's side of things because he's beautiful. He's nice. He's the good guy in all of this. But by the end of the episode, we find out that the Golden Man, who's supposed to be the good guy, is actually the bad guy. And the Frog Man, who's supposed to be the bad guy, is actually the good guy. And I remember when I was a child watching that, I guess I had just gotten out of vacation Bible school because it made me think of the Good Samaritan parable. Because here's a parable where the ones who are supposed to be the good guys, the priests and the Levites, and there's one who's supposed to be the bad guy, the Samaritan. The ones who are supposed to be good do the wrong thing, and one who's supposed to be bad does the right thing. Do you see the connection? Well, that parable, that story of the Good Samaritan, it is a very common trope in TV, movies, and in literature. There's that really wonderful classic movie, Die Hard 3. Yeah? Samuel Jackson's character is called by Jeremy Irons the Samaritan because he jumped in to help out Bruce Willis when he wasn't supposed to. And again, I've told you about my love for Louis L'Amour books. In his classic, Flint is a stone-cold killer. But yet, goes against what we think his nature to be to pick up an orphaned child and provide for him a good life. So, but now, while I've said these things, my guess is y'all are probably thinking of TV shows and movies and books that have had that theme running through them, right? So who has an example of something like that? From a movie or a TV show or a book? What? Silas Marner. Wow, that's actually a real classic, not my Louis L'Amour Flint stuff. Good. What else? Of Mice and Men. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, Lester. That's very good. Thank you. What else? I can tell you one that the kids and I talked about this week. We watched the Supergirl TV show on the CW. And if you follow comic books, you're familiar with Supergirl. And one of the characters in there is Martian Manhunter, John Jones. Martian Manhunter is a green Martian. The green Martians were almost utterly wiped out by white Martians. And John Jones runs into a white Martian. And remember, he blames the white Martians for the complete destruction of his race. And John Jones is injured, and he has to receive aid from a white Martian. and it is the most difficult thing he has ever done. So there's lots of Good Samaritan examples in our society. I'm shocked no one brought up the finale of Seinfeld. You remember this? The Good Samaritan law? I mean, there's lots of places that have Good Samaritan laws, and those laws are in place to protect you from giving aid when you give aid to a stranger, so that you have to help and you cannot be sued afterwards. The Good Samaritan is a very popular parable in our culture. Chances are it is so popular that we may have forgotten how offensive it can be. Believe it or not, this parable was very offensive to the people to whom Jesus was speaking. When he tells them this story, I guarantee you they were shocked, surprised, and probably offended. Now, remember the Good Samaritan. So we hear those things together and we think automatically that Samaritans were good, that they were the heroes, and that the Samaritan is supposed to be the hero of this story. But that's not the case. The Jews and Samaritans did not get along. And when I say they did not get along, look back when you get a chance in the few verses before this. Jesus and his disciples are on their way to Jerusalem, and they go to stop in a Samaritan village, and we are told that the Samaritan village did not receive him. So, the sons of thunder, James and John, asked for permission to rain down heavenly fire and consume the entire village. Now, if this was just a little simple dislike, I would think this would be a little over the top. Don't you? It just goes to show how deep the hatred of one another was. And this goes back for centuries. It started after the time of King David, when the two kingdoms split into the northern and southern kingdom. And then, when the kingdom split, you had all these different foreign powers coming in and taking the people into exile. And when the people return from exile to the southern kingdom, they look at the Samaritans in the northern kingdom, and they think the Samaritans have diluted the Jewish race because they have married foreigners. They think the Samaritans have forgotten God, that they are following a false religion. Well, the Samaritans thought the same thing about the Jews. The Samaritans had their own Torah. The Jews had a different Torah. The Samaritans had their own temple, their own central place of worship, Mount Gerizim, and the Jews had their own as well. This was not just a simple dislike. There was hatred going on here. In fact, around the year 160 BCE, somewhere in there, this was during the Maccabean revolt, a guy named John Hyrcanus led a group of Jewish warriors to the temple of the Samaritans and destroyed it. Utterly destroyed it, reduced it to rubble. Now, this just wasn't a place of worship. This was the temple, the center of their worship, and the Jews had destroyed it. And in Jesus' time, those violent confrontations are continuing. When you think about the animosity between these groups, almost think Hatfields and McCoys, right? But more violent. When you think about the differences in these groups, we're not just talking about the typical UT-OU rivalry here, right? This is like the Shias and the Sunnis and how they feel about each other. This is extreme dislike for one another. And so when Jesus is telling this parable, no one expected him to bring up a Samaritan. And surely no one expected the Samaritan to be the hero of the story. If Jesus were here today and were telling this parable to us, and to try to put it in terms that we might understand, I think the parable might go something like the people who passed by the victim on the side of the road, they're a preacher. The next one is an elder. And then finally, an Islamic extremist terrorist shows up and gives mercy to the man in the ditch. Are you seeing how offensive this parable could be? So as Jesus tells this parable, it's more than being just offensive. When Jesus tells this parable, he tells it in response to a lawyer. And the lawyer is someone who has studied the law, someone who has studied the scriptures, someone who knows what is going on. And if we think back to the way this all worked out, it goes with the lawyer saying to Jesus, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And then he tells the story, eventually, of the Good Samaritan. Normally, when we think about the parable, we think about the Good Samaritan, right? I mean, that's who we focus on. At least that's who I have always focused on. I mean, it's the Good Samaritan that is the climax of this parable. It's the Good Samaritan that finally reaches out and gives aid and mercy to the person in the ditch. It's the Good Samaritan who takes all the risk. Remember, this is a Samaritan in a Jewish territory. And if he is seen traveling with a stripped, beaten, half-dead Jew, who do you think they're going to blame? And it is the Samaritan who gives of his own money to pay for this man's healing. And so I've always focused on the Samaritan. What about the victim in this story? What about the presumably Jewish man on the side of the road who has been stripped, beaten, and left half dead? The man who has been passed by two of his Jewish brethren. And the man who finally sees coming to his aid the one type of human being he has been born and bred to hate. The one person that he has been conditioned to think is not worthy. The one person who he would rather die than be saved by. If we want to think about what it must have been like for that man on the side of the road, that's the question we must ask ourselves. Who is the one person, the one type of person, the one whatever, that we would rather die than receive aid from? If we can put a face to that, then we'll have an understanding, maybe, of what this Jewish man felt when the Samaritan came to his aid. Back to the idea of this being offensive, when after the young leader said, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" the catalyst for all this, Jesus does what he normally does. He turns the question around on the young ruler and says, "What do the scriptures say? Love God, love your neighbor." Jesus says, "Great, you have answered wisely. Do this and you shall live." Unfortunately, the lawyer can't stop. He keeps going and says, "Who is my neighbor?" And Jesus tells this parable. And then, after telling the parable, he asks the lawyer, "Who is the neighbor?" And you can still feel the hate that this lawyer has for Samaritans, because he can't even say Samaritan. He says, "The one who showed mercy." Jesus says, "Go and do likewise." Do you remember why Jesus told this parable? It started off with the question, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Remember, the Jews didn't think the Samaritans could inherit eternal life. And yet Jesus says, act like this Samaritan. Love God, love neighbor like this Samaritan did, and you can inherit eternal life. Remember what Jesus would say about the Samaritan if he was here today? How would we feel if Jesus said that person would inherit eternal life? But it can't just be about works, right? It can't just be about what you do. Because then after this, we have the story of Mary and Martha. And Martha is criticized for doing, for working, for trying to do good for others. And it is Mary who does nothing but sit there and listen, who is praised. First, Jesus tells us we must act, we must do. Then Jesus says, don't act, don't do. What are we to do? The reality is we don't know for sure. This is perfect for Lent. On Wednesday, we were reminded that In life and in death, we belong to God. Lent is a time to be reminded that God is God, and we are not. You put these two stories together, and it tells us that Jesus decides who gets eternal life. It's not up to us. It's up to God. It is up to God to determine who gets eternal life. And we would do well to remember that. And we would do well to live as people who do not get to decide who else is deserving of God's gift of eternal life. Maybe this parable isn't offensive to us, but if it isn't, it should at least convict us, to remind us that God is God. God determines. We do not. Amen.